The alarm sounds filled the ship with a red light. Jake Murphy held tight to his chair as the stellar wanderer shook like a leaf in a storm. Metal pieces crashed against the hull outside. The ship's engine screamed and then went silent. Hull breach. "On deck 3, called out Quinder from his station. The blue-green alien's webbed fingers moved fast over the controls. His big eyes reflected the warning lights as he worked. Captain Zix H stood in the center of the bridge. His crystal body sparkled even in the dim emergency lighting. "Engine status," he said in his strange musical voice. Eltar clicked his mandibles together. The insect-like alien checked his screens with 4 arms at once. "Main engines offline. Backup power holding. But we have a problem, Captain." Jake felt his stomach drop. In space, problems usually meant death. He had been on enough missions to know that much. The human pushed himself up from his chair and walked to the main screen. Outside, chunks of metal and rock floated past the ship. What kind of problem? Zixith asked. Eltar's compound eyes dimmed. "Food systems are down. The crash damaged the main food processor. Emergency ration storage got hit too. Most of our food is gone." The bridge went quiet except for the hum of life support. Jake looked at his 3 alien crewmates. They all had the same look on their faces. Fear. "How much food do we have left?" The captain asked. "Maybe enough for 1 day," Eltar said. "The emergency packs that didn't get damaged won't last long." Jake walked to the damaged console. He had learned to read the alien writing during his 2 years with the Coalition. The numbers were not good. What about the distress beacon? Quinder checked another screen. Working. But we're in the middle of nowhere. This system isn't on any major trade routes. It could be weeks before someone finds us. Weeks, Jake felt. The word hit him like a punch. He had been hungry before. In the Marines, they taught you to go without food for days. But weeks was different. Weeks was deadly. Captain Zixith's crystal body grew dimmer. "My people can survive 3 days without proper minerals. After that, our bodies start to break down." 4 days for me," Quinder said. His voice was quiet. "My metabolism needs constant fuel for both air and water breathing." Beltar clicked his mandibles again. It was a nervous sound. The hive-mind connection requires energy. When individual drones run low on food, we lose contact with the collective. I calculate 68 hours before complete disconnection. Jake looked at each of them. All 3 aliens were already worried about dying, but something felt different to him. Maybe it was his training. Maybe it was something else. "I need to check the hydroponics bay," he said. "The growing systems were damaged in the crash," Beltar pointed out. "Ship sensors show most plant life is dead." "Most doesn't mean all," Jake said. He moved toward the door. "I'll be back in an hour." The hydroponics bay was a mess. Broken glass and twisted metal covered the floor. Most of the growing tubes were cracked and empty. Dead plants hung from damaged supports like sad decorations. But Jake was not looking at the dead plants. He was looking at the floor. Between the broken glass, small green things were growing. The ship's cleaning systems had failed, so dirt and seeds had scattered everywhere. Now tiny plants pushed up through the cracks. Jake knelt down and picked up one of the small plants. It looked like something from Earth. Not exactly the same, but close. The leaves were tough and green. The stem was thick. His grandmother would have called it a weed dot. He moved through the bay slowly. More plants grew in corners where the artificial light still worked. Some looked familiar. Others were completely strange. But they were all alive. They were all growing. Computer. Jake said out loud, double quotes. Yes, Jake Murphy? The ship's AI answered. What do you know about these plants growing in the hydroponics bay? Scanning, the computer said. A blue light moved over the plants Jake was holding. Classification: biological waste. Contamination from seed stock. Recommendation: immediate disposal. Jake smiled. Biological waste. That was what the computer called weeds. But humans had been eating weeds for thousands of years. When food was hard to find, people ate whatever they could. Dandelions, plantain, wild onions. Things that other people threw away. He picked more plants and put them in his sample bag. Some had small flowers. Others had thick roots. One plant had leaves that smelled like mint when he crushed them. When Jake got back to the bridge, his 3 crewmates were sitting quietly. They looked tired already. The crystal captain was dimmer than before. Quindara's bright blue-green skin was starting to look gray. Beltar sat very still, probably trying to save energy. Find anything useful? Captain Zixith asked. Jake held up his sample bag. Maybe. There are plants growing down there. The computer calls them weeds, but they might be food. Biological waste cannot provide proper nutrition, Beltar said. The ship's database shows these plants as toxic to most species. Toxic to most species, Jake repeated. But maybe not to humans. Quinder lifted his large head. You would risk poisoning yourself? Jake sat down at his station. He pulled out one of the small plants and looked at it closely. The leaves were thick and green. They looked healthy. My people have a saying, desperate times call for desperate measures. That seems unwise, Captain Zixith said. His voice was getting weaker. Maybe, Jake said. He put the plant back in his bag. But my grandmother used to say that a weed is just a plant growing in the wrong place. Maybe these plants are growing in the right place after all. The human stood up and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a rescue ship might be looking for them. But it might take weeks to find them. His alien friends would be dead long. Before then, unless Jake could prove that sometimes being human meant being able to eat anything, even space weeds. Day 2 started badly. Jake woke up to the sound of Quinder coughing. The blue-green alien was curled up in his sleeping cot, making wet, choking sounds. His skin had lost most of its bright color. How are you feeling? Jake asked, walking over to check on him. Terrible, Quinder said. His voice was rough. My body is starting to shut down systems to save energy. First the extra gills close. Then the water breathing stops working. Jake nodded. He had read about Aquarian biology during his training. They needed a lot of food to keep both air and water breathing systems running. Without it, they basically suffocated slowly. Captain Zixt H was worse. The crystal alien sat in his command chair, but his body barely glowed. Yesterday, he had sparkled like a diamond. Today, he looked like dirty glass. His movements were slow and stiff. Captain, Jake said, do you need anything? Minerals, Zixt said. His voice was weak and hard to understand. My people need specific compounds, iron oxide, calcium carbonate, silicon dioxide. Without them, our bodies cannot maintain structure. Beltar was the strangest to watch. The insect alien sat perfectly still for long periods. His forearms hung at his sides. His compound eyes stared at nothing. Beltar? Jake called. Are you okay? The alien's head turned slowly. Connection to hive mind is weakening. Individual drones are not meant to think alone for long periods. It is ... frightening. Jake looked at his 3 friends. They were dying. He could see it happening hour by hour. But he felt fine. Actually, he felt better than fine. He felt good. Last night, Jake had tried eating one of the small plants from the hydroponics bay. He started with just a tiny piece of leaf. He chewed it slowly and waited. It tasted bitter, but not bad. Like spinach mixed with grass. He waited. 2 hours. No stomach pain. No sickness. No problems at all. So he ate more. A whole leaf. And another plant. By the end of the night, he had eaten 6 different types of space weeds. His stomach felt full for the first time since the crash. Now Jake went back to the hydroponics bay. He needed to find more food. Not just for himself, but maybe something. His friends could eat too. The bay looked different in the morning light. More plants had grown overnight. Jake found a patch of something that looked like clover. Next to it, tall grass-like plants with small seeds at the top. In a corner, thick-leaved plants that reminded him of cabbage. Jake picked samples of everything. He put each type in a different container and labeled them. If he was going to do this right, he needed to be scientific about it. Computer, he sighed, analyze these plant samples. What compounds do they contain? The blue scanning light moved over each container. Sample 1 contains high levels of chlorophyll, vitamin C, and fiber. Sample 2 shows protein content and essential amino acids. Sample 3 has calcium, iron, and multiple B vitamins. Jake smiled. The plants were not just edible. They were nutritious. What about toxicity? Toxicity levels vary by species. Fatal to vorthons due to silicon interference. Dangerous to aquarians because of high alkaloid content. Lethal to hive mind drones due to neurological disruption compounds. What about humans? Toxicity to humans, minimal. Comparable to common Earth vegetation. That was what Jake needed to hear. The plants that were poison to his friends were just vegetables to him. Evolution had played a cruel trick. The only species that could survive on the available food was the one the others considered the weakest. Jake spent the morning eating and collecting. He tried different combinations of plants. Some tasted terrible. Others were almost pleasant. One type of grass seed could be chewed into a nutty paste. Another plant had roots that tasted like turnips. When he returned to the bridge, his friends looked worse. Quinder was barely breathing. His skin was now gray-white. Captain Zixith had dimmed so much that Jake could barely see him. Baltar sat, completely motionless. "Jake," Quinder whispered, "you look healthy." Jake sat down next to him. It was true. While his friends were dying, Jake felt strong. His stomach was full. His energy was good. He felt guilty about it. "I found food," Jake said. "Lots of it. The plants in the hydroponics bay are edible. For humans, anyway." "That is impossible," Baltar said suddenly. His voice was flat and strange. "Our databases show those organisms as biological waste. They cannot sustain complex life." "They can sustain human life," Jake said. He pulled out some of the plants he had collected. "Look at me. I've been eating these for over a day. I feel fine." Captain Zixth lifted his dim head. "You are poisoning yourself. The madness from toxins makes you think you feel well." Jake stood up and did 10 push-ups right there on the bridge. Then he jumped up and down. Then he recited the alphabet backwards. "Do I seem poison to you?" The 3 aliens stared at him. They could not understand what they were seeing. Their databases said the plants were toxic. Their science said it was impossible. But Jake was clearly healthy while they were dying. How? Quinder asked. Jake thought about how to explain it. "My people come from a world with lots of different environments. Hot places, cold places, wet places, dry places. We had to eat whatever we could find. Our bodies learned to handle many different types of food." "Evolutionary adaptation," Baltar said. His voice was getting weaker. "Right," Jake said. "Your people evolved to be very good at eating specific things. My people evolved to be sort of okay at eating almost anything." He held up one of the plants. "This might be poisonous to you, but to me, It's just another green vegetable. Quinder coughed again. We are going to die, and you are going to live by eating weeds. Jake looked at his friends. They were right. In 2 more days, maybe 3, they would all be dead. He would be alone on the ship, eating space weeds and waiting for rescue. Unless he could figure out a way to help them. Computer, Jake said, can these plants be processed to remove the compounds that are toxic to other species? Negative. The toxic compounds are integrated into the cellular structure. Removal would destroy nutritional value. Jake sat down hard. In his chair, there had to be something he could do. He was not going to watch his friends die while he ate salad, but looking at Captain Zixith's dim crystal body, Quinder's gray skin, and Beltar's empty stare, Jake realized something terrible. Maybe there was nothing he could do. Maybe being human meant surviving while others died. Maybe evolution was crueler than he had ever imagined. Day 3 brought new problems. Jake woke up to find Beltar standing in the middle of the bridge, turning in slow circles. The insect alien was talking to himself in clicking sounds. Baltar? Jake called out. What are you doing? Looking for. The others, Beltar said. His voice was strange and hollow. The hive mind is silent. I cannot find my brothers and sisters. They were here yesterday. Jake felt sad watching him. Beltar was losing his mind along with his connection to the hive. They're back home, remember? We're on a mission. Mission? Baltar blinked his compound eyes. Yes, mission. But why am I alone? Captain Zixth was barely moving now. His crystal body was so dim that Jake had to look closely to see him breathing. The Vorthan had not spoken since yesterday. Quinder was the worst. The Aquarian lay curled up in his sleeping pod, gasping like a fish out of water. His skin was completely gray now, and his big eyes had lost their shine. Jake checked on each of them, but there was nothing he could do. He was not a doctor. He was just a human who happened to be good at eating weeds, and he was getting very good at it. Jake had spent the morning in the hydroponics bay learning about his new diet. He found that some plants tasted better raw, others were better cooked. The ship's emergency heating unit still worked, so he could make hot water. Jake discovered that the grass-like plants could be boiled into a soup. The thick-leaved plants were good roasted. The small flowers added flavor to everything. He was eating better than he had in weeks. Computer, Jake said as he prepared his breakfast. How much nutrition am I getting from these plants? Daily. Nutritional requirements for human males. Met at 97% efficiency, the computer replied. Protein, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals, all within acceptable ranges. Jake laughed out loud. He was getting better nutrition from space weeds than from the ship's regular food. What about calories? Current caloric intake, 2,400 calories per day. Optimal for your body weight and activity level. That explained why Jake felt so good. He was not just surviving on the plants. He was thriving. While his friends starved, he was eating like a king, but the guilt was getting worse. Every time Jake looked at his dying friends, he felt terrible. It was not fair that only humans could eat the plants. It was not fair that evolution had made. This cruel joke. Jake spent the afternoon trying to help his crewmates. He brought them water. He checked their vital signs with a medical scanner. He talked to them to keep them awake. Tell me about your home world, Jake said to Quinder. Aquarian opened his eyes slowly. Beautiful oceans, he whispered. Crystal clear water. Fish that glow like stars. I used to swim for hours, hunting in the deep trenches. It sounds amazing, Jake said. He held Quinder's webbed hand. It felt cold and dry. I will never see it again, Quinder said. I will die here, in this metal box, surrounded by poison plants. Jake squeezed his hand. Don't say that. Rescue is coming. But they both knew rescue might take weeks. Quinder would be dead tomorrow. Jake visited Captain Zixith next. The crystal alien was so dim that Jake could barely see him in his chair. "Captain, can you hear me?" Zixith's head moved slightly. "Jake Murphy," he said. His voice was like wind through broken glass. "You must take command when I am gone." "You're not going anywhere," Jake said, but his voice did not sound convincing. "The ship's codes are in my personal file," Zixth continued. "The Coalition must know what happened here. They must know that humans can survive where others cannot." Jake felt tears in his eyes. He was watching his friends die, and there was nothing he could do about it. Finally, Jake checked on Beltar. The insect alien was sitting in a corner, staring at the wall. "How are you feeling?" Jake asked. "Empty," Beltar said. "For my entire life, I have been connected to thousands of minds. Now there is only silence. I do not know how to exist alone." Jake sat down next to him. "You're not alone. I'm here." "You are not hive mind," Beltar said. "Your thoughts are strange. To me, chaotic. How do you live with only one voice in your head?" Jake had never thought about it that way. "I guess we just get used to it. Humans are always alone in our own heads." "It is terrifying," Beltar said. That evening, Jake made himself a large meal from the space plants. He had learned to combine different types for better flavor. The grass seeds made a nutty bread. The thick leaves worked like lettuce for salad. The flowers made a tea that tasted like mint. As he ate, Jake thought about what Beltar had said. Humans were always alone in their heads. Maybe that was part of why they were so adaptable. When you could not rely on others, you had to rely on yourself. And when you had to rely on yourself, you learned to eat whatever you could find. Jake's grandmother had lived through the Great Depression. She used to tell him stories about eating. Dandelion greens and acorn bread. "Waste not, want not," she would say. "A hungry person learns to see food where others see weeds." Maybe that was the secret. Humans had been hungry so many times throughout history that they had learned to eat everything. Other species had never needed to develop that skill. Jake looked out at the stars through the bridge window. His friends were dying because their evolution had made them too specialized. They were like fine machines that only worked with the right fuel, but humans were like old pickup trucks. They might not be as efficient or as elegant, but they could run on almost anything. Jake finished his meal and cleaned up. Tomorrow would be day 4. By then, all 3 of his friends might be gone. He would be alone on the ship with nothing but space weeds for company. But he would be alive. And when rescue came, he would be able to tell them about the plants. Maybe his survival would help other humans in the future. Maybe sometimes, being the primitive species had its advantages. Jake went to sleep that night with a full stomach, listening to the labored breathing of his dying friends. He dreamed of his grandmother's garden, where weeds grew wild and free, waiting for someone hungry enough to see them as food. Day 4 was the day Jake realized he was going to be alone. Captain Zixith had stopped responding completely. His crystal body was so dim that Jake could barely see it. Only the faint rise and fall of his chest showed he was still alive. Jake had to put his ear close to hear the tiny whisper of breath. Quinder was unconscious. The Aquarian lay very still in his sleeping pod. His gray skin felt cold and dry. The medical scanner showed his heart beating very slowly, like an old clock winding down. Beltar was the most disturbing to watch. The insect alien sat in the same corner, rocking back and forth. He talked constantly now, but not to Jake. He was having conversations with voices only he could hear. "Yes, I understand the mission parameters," Beltar would say to empty air. Then he would pause, as if listening. "No, the human is not following proper feeding protocols." Jake tried talking to him, but Beltar did not seem to know he was there anymore. Meanwhile, Jake had never felt better in his life. He had spent the morning in the hydroponics bay, expanding his garden. More plants were growing every day. He had found over 20 different types now. Some were starting to flower. Others were growing bigger leaves. Jake had become an expert at preparing space weeds. He could make soup from the grass plants. He could roast the thick leaves until they tasted like roasted vegetables. He had even figured out how to dry some of the plants to make spices. "Computer," Jake said as he prepared lunch, "analyze my current health status." The medical scanner hummed over him. All systems normal. Nutrition levels optimal. Physical condition excellent. Blood work shows no signs of toxicity or malnutrition. Jake nodded. He had been eating nothing but space weeds for 4 days, and he was healthier than when they started. The mission. He sat down to eat his meal while looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a rescue ship was looking for them. But would it arrive in time? His friends had maybe hours left. Not days. Jake thought about what he would tell the rescue team. How do you explain that you survived by eating the very plants that killed your crewmates? How do you make them understand that being human meant being able to eat anything? After lunch, Jake went back to check on his friends. Captain Zixith had not moved. Quinder was still unconscious. But Beltar was different. The insect alien was standing up, looking directly at Jake. "You are not what you appear to be," Beltar said. His voice was clearer than it had been in days. "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "The hive mind has been studying you through my eyes," Beltar said. "Even weakened, we can still observe and analyze. You should be dead. The biological waste you consume should have killed you by now." Jake sat down across from him. "It's not biological waste to me. It's food." "Impossible," Beltar said. "Our databases contain information on thousands of species. None can survive on such diverse plant matter. None can process the alkaloids and toxins present in those organisms. Maybe your databases are incomplete," Jake suggested. Beltar's compound eyes focused on him. "Or maybe humans are more than they appear to be." Jake thought about that. "What do you mean?" "Evolution creates specialists," Beltar explained. "Vorthans evolved to process specific minerals efficiently. Aquarians developed dual respiratory systems for maximum aquatic adaptation. Hive minds achieved perfect collective intelligence." "And humans?" Jake asked. "Humans appear to have evolved ... differently. Instead of becoming specialists, you became generalists. Instead of becoming efficient, you became adaptable." Jake had never thought of it that way. "Is that bad?" "In normal circumstances, yes." Beltar said, "Specialists outperform generalists in optimal conditions, but these are not optimal conditions." Beltar walked slowly to the window. "The hive mind is analyzing the implications. If humans can survive where other species cannot, it changes everything about deep space exploration." Jake joined him at the window. "How so?" "Think about it," Beltar said. "We build ships with perfect food systems. We plan for every contingency. We create safety protocols for every known situation. But we never planned for this. For what? For biological failure, for the systems that keep us alive breaking down. We never considered that survival might require eating ... weeds." Jake looked back at his dying friends. "So you're saying humans are better at surviving disasters?" "I am saying humans are disasters," Beltar said. "Your entire evolutionary history is a series of catastrophes. Ice ages, famines, plagues, volcanic eruptions. Your species survived by being able to eat anything, live anywhere, and adapt to everything." Jake had never thought of humans that way. "We're disaster survivors." "You are walking disasters," Beltar corrected. "Everywhere humans go, you change the environment to suit you. You eat whatever is available. You modify anything that does. not work. You adapt constantly. Beltar turned away from the window. Other species see this as primitive, chaotic, inefficient, but now I understand. It is not primitive. It is the ultimate survival strategy. Jake felt strange hearing this. So being human is actually an advantage. In situations like this, yes, Beltar said. When perfection fails, chaos succeeds. When efficiency breaks down, adaptability survives. That afternoon, Jake made detailed notes about everything he had learned. He documented each plant type, how to prepare them, and what nutrition they provided. If he was the only one who would survive, he wanted to. Make sure the information could help other humans later. As he worked, Jake thought about what Beltar had said. Humans as walking disasters. It was not a flattering way to think about his species. But maybe it was accurate. Humans had spread across Earth by learning to eat everything and live everywhere. They had survived ice ages by adapting their behavior. They had outlasted famines by finding new food sources. They had beaten diseases by developing stronger immune systems. Maybe what looked like weakness was actually strength. That evening, Jake made his best meal yet. He combined 6 different plants into a stew that actually tasted good. He made bread from grass seeds. He brewed tea from flower petals. As he ate, Jake looked at his 3 dying friends. Captain Zixth was barely visible now. Quinder had not moved all day. Beltar sat quietly, probably using his last energy to maintain his connection with the hive-mind. Tomorrow would be day 5. By then, Jake would probably be alone, but he would not be helpless. He would not be starving. He would be a human doing what humans did best, surviving against the odds by eating whatever was available, even if it was just space weeds. Day 6 started with the most beautiful sound Jake had ever heard. The long-range communication system crackled to life. Coalition vessel Stellar Wanderer, this is rescue ship New Horizon. Do you copy? Jake ran to the communication station so fast he almost fell over a sleeping pod. His hands shook as he grabbed the microphone. New Horizon, this is Jake Murphy aboard Stellar Wanderer. We copy. Thank God you found us. Stellar Wanderer, what is your crew status? We show for life forms. On sensors. Jake looked around the bridge. Captain Zixith lay motionless in his command chair. His crystal body was so dim, it looked like cloudy glass. Quinder had not moved in 2 days. His gray skin was dry and cracked. Beltar sat in his corner, staring at nothing. 3 crew members. In critical condition, Jake reported. Starvation. They need immediate medical attention. Copy that. We'll be docked in 30 minutes. Medical team is standing by. Jake spent those 30 minutes trying to wake his friends. He got no response from Captain Zixth or Quinder, but Beltar turned his head when Jake called his name. Rescue? Beltar whispered, "Yes," Jake said. They're here. You're going to be okay. The hive mind will be pleased, Beltar said. They were very concerned about losing this drone. The rescue ship docked with a loud clang. Jake heard footsteps in the corridor. Then the bridge door opened and 6 aliens in rescue suits rushed in. The rescue team leader was a tall, thin alien with purple skin and forearms. Jake had never seen his species before. I am Commander Veltar, the alien said. Where are the critical patients? Jake pointed to his 3 friends. The medical team rushed to them with scanners and emergency equipment. Within minutes, they had Captain Zixith on a stretcher. 2 medics worked on Quinder, while another helped Beltar walk. What about you? Commander Veltar asked Jake. You look remarkably healthy for someone who has been stranded for 6 days. I'm fine, Jake said. Better than fine, actually. The commander looked confused. The distress signal said you lost all food systems. How did you survive? Jake pointed toward the hydroponics bay. I found plants growing down there. Turns out humans can eat them. Plants? Commander Veltar followed. Jake to the damaged bay. When he saw the growing weeds, his 4 eyes went wide. You ate these? Every day, Jake said. They're actually pretty nutritious once you know how to prepare them. The commander pulled out a scanner and pointed it at the plants. These organisms show high levels of toxic alkaloids. They should be lethal to most carbon-based life forms. Most, Jake said, but not humans. 2 hours later, Jake sat in the rescue ship's medical bay. The doctor, a 6-legged alien with a shell like a turtle, was reviewing his test results. Fascinating, Dr. Kilmont said. Your blood work shows no signs of poisoning. In fact, your nutrition levels are better than average. How is this possible? Jake had been thinking about that question for days. I think it's because humans evolved differently than other species. How so? We're generalists instead of specialists, Jake explained. We can eat almost anything because we had to. Our ancestors went through famines, ice ages, disasters. The ones who survived were the ones who could eat whatever they found. Dr. Kilmont made notes on his medical pad. So you are saying human digestive systems are unusually adaptable? Exactly, Jake said. What's poison to you is just another vegetable to me. The doctor's shell clicked as he moved. This has enormous implications for space exploration. If humans can survive on plant matter that other species cannot eat, it changes everything about emergency protocols. Jake nodded. That's what I thought, too. 3 days later, Jake sat in the Coalition Medical Center on Kepler Station. His 3 friends were in recovery tanks, getting the nutrition and medical care they needed. The doctors said all 3 would survive, but it had been close. Commander Veltar visited Jake in his temporary quarters. The Coalition Council wants to meet with you, he said. About what? About your survival report. You documented 37 different plant species that are edible to humans but toxic to other Coalition species. Jake had spent his time on the rescue ship writing everything down. Every plant he had eaten, how to prepare them, what they tasted like, how much nutrition they provided. He wanted to make sure other humans could benefit from what he had learned. It's important information, Jake said. More important than you realize, Commander Veltar said. The Council is considering new policies for deep space exploration. They want humans on every long-range mission. Why? Because you can survive where others cannot, the commander explained. Your species' adaptability is now considered a crucial asset for exploration teams. Jake felt strange about that. His friends had almost died while he ate space weeds. Now the Coalition wanted to use that as an advantage? What about my crewmates? Jake asked. How are they doing? Captain Zixt H is recovering well. His crystal structure is returning to normal brightness. Quinder's respiratory systems are stable. Beltar has reconnected with the hive mind. Jake visited them the next day. Captain Zixt was sitting up. In his medical bed, his crystal body sparkling brightly again. Jake Murphy, he said in his musical voice. I owe you my life. You don't owe me anything, Jake said. I just got lucky. Not lucky, Captain Zixt said. Adapted. The Council has asked me to recommend you for the Coalition Medal of Survival Excellence. Jake felt embarrassed. I just ate weeds, Captain. Anyone could have done it. No, said a voice from the next bed. Quinder was awake, his blue-green skin bright and healthy again. Not anyone, only humans. We have learned something important about your species. Valtar appeared in the doorway. He looked completely different from the confused, lonely creature. Jake remembered. His compound eyes were bright and alert. The hive mind has been analyzing the data from our mission, he said. What kind of data? Jake asked. Survival adaptability metrics, Beltar explained. The hive mind has concluded that humans represent a unique evolutionary solution to environmental uncertainty. Jake sat down in the chair between the beds. What does that mean? It means, Captain Zixith said, that while other species evolved to be perfect in specific environments, humans evolved to be adequate in any environment. Adequate sounds like an insult, Jake said. Quinder laughed, a sound like water bubbling over rocks. It is the highest compliment possible. Perfect systems fail when conditions change. Adequate systems adapt and survive. 2 weeks later, Jake stood before the Coalition Council in their great chamber on the Central Space Station. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the curved seats. In the center, the Council of Elders waited to hear his report. Jake Murphy of Earth, said the Elder Prime, an ancient creature that looked like a living tree. Your survival documentation has been studied by our best scientists. We have concluded that your experience represents a paradigm shift in our understanding of emergency survival. Jake felt nervous speaking to so many important aliens. I just want to help other people survive if they get stranded like we did. Your documentation will do exactly that, said another elder, this one looking like a floating jellyfish. But more importantly, it has shown us the value of biological diversity in our exploration teams. The Elder Prime gestured with a branch-like arm. The Coalition hereby establishes the Murphy Protocol. All deep space missions lasting more than 10 days must include at least one human crew member trained in emergency foraging. Jake could not believe what he was hearing. You're naming it after me? Your survival techniques will save lives. The Elder Prime said, ships will carry documentation of edible plants for human consumption. Humans will be trained to identify food sources that other species cannot use. A month later, Jake was back on duty aboard a new ship, the Galactic Explorer, but this time things were different. The ship carried detailed botanical databases of emergency food sources. The crew included 2 other humans trained in survival foraging. The emergency protocols had been completely rewritten. Captain Zixth H. commanded the new ship. Quinder was the science officer again. Beltar had requested to stay on Jake's team. They were joined by 2 new humans. Lisa Park, a botanist from Earth's agricultural colonies, and Kevin Wright, a former wilderness survival instructor. It feels good to be back in space, Jake said as they left port for their first mission to an unexplored system. It feels safer, Captain Zixith said, knowing that if disaster strikes, we have crew members who can survive on almost anything. Jake looked out at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there were new worlds with new plants. Some would be poisonous to most species. But maybe, just maybe, they would be dinner for humans. 6 months later, Jake received a message from Coalition headquarters. His emergency survival manual had been translated into 847 different languages. It was required reading at every space academy. Thousands of exploration crews now carried copies. The message included testimonials from 17 different missions, where humans had used Jake's techniques to survive emergencies. In every case, the human crew members had kept their alien teammates alive by finding food that no one else could eat. Jake printed out the message and put it on his wall next to a picture of his grandmother. She had taught him that